Good morning, students. This is your teacher Neelam Elawat, and we'll continue the chapter that is chapter evolution. In the last topic, we have discussed the theories of evolution, and now we'll continue with that topic also in today's video. So, we'll come to the third theory. So far, we've discussed two theories. The very first was theory of special creation, and the second was theory of panspermia. Right, everyone? Now we'll come to the third theory, that is called theory of spontaneous generation. This is called theory of spontaneous generation. Now this theory believed that living organisms they have arisen from the decaying metal like straw. Straw, you know everyone? Straw that is used in juices, isn't it? That is a plastic straw. Now straw made up of wood. Okay. So these the theory of special generation says that all living organisms they have arisen, they have come from the decaying matter like the straw. But later, a few years later, the Louis Pasteur he dismissed this theory and he demonstrated that life can only exist from the pre-existing life. Right? He showed it experimentally also. He performed an experiment like he had taken a flask, right everyone? He took a flask and this flask was sterilized. Okay, so he took a flask, then this flask was sterilized, and in this flask heat killed yeast was kept and the flask was properly covered. So there was absolutely no growth in this flask after a few hours or after a few days. Now secondly, what he did, he sterilized the flask, then he kept the heat killed yeast in the flask and he broke this flask. Means he allowed the air to enter into the flask. When the air was allowed, to enter into the flask, after few days the microbial growth was observed into it. Okay, after a few days new living organisms started arising from the killed yeast, the yeast which was killed by heating or by boiling. So life started existing into it. So the theory of spontaneous generation that was dismissed by Louis Pasteur. Okay, but there was one thing that he did not answer, that how life forms came on the surface of the earth. Okay, he could not decide and he could not explain how life would have came on the surface of the earth. The second, that is a fourth theory, that is called the theory of chemical evolution. The theory of chemical evolution that was proposed by Oparin and Heldon. And they proposed that life have come from the pre-existing non-living molecules. They said that life has originated from the non-living molecules like your RNA, proteins, etc. And the formation of life was then preceded by the chemical evolution. Okay, so once the life was formed, then there was a chemical evolution occurred, and that resulted diverse kind of organic molecules that resulted in the formation of variety of organic molecules from the inorganic substances. And the conditions on the surface of the earth, the conditions that were existed on the surface of the earth, like your high temperature, second is your volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere. The earth was not having the oxygen at that point of time. It mainly contained methane, ammonia and water vapor. So the atmosphere of the earth was reducing. So all these conditions that were prevailing on the earth atmosphere, they supported the formation of living organisms from the non-living organisms. Right? This is, suppose there's a life and there are non-living organisms, slowly and gradually it results in the formation of living organisms. Now this concept of chemical evolution of life was later experimentally established by S.L. Miller. Okay, Stanley Miller and Urey, they provided an experimental evidence to this theory. How? They used this following apparatus and they created the atmosphere, the reducing atmosphere which the Operan Haldane were talking about. They created the reducing atmosphere. They created the similar conditions in the laboratory as they were talking about. So they created an electric spark, in a closed flask. And this flask was having the methane, hydrogen, ammonia, and the water vapor. Okay, it was having the water vapor. And at a temperature of around 800 degrees Celsius was maintained. Okay, so inside the apparatus, the temperature was around 800 degrees Celsius. And they you can say they recreated the atmosphere that the Operan Haldane has suggested in their chemical theory. Okay, and they observed the formation of amino acids. They observed the formation of amino acids when electric discharge, you can say when current was passed or lightning stimulation was given, then after a few weeks there was a formation of amino acids. And in similar other experiments also, there were a formation of sugars. Formation of sugar was obtained. Formation of pigments, fats were also obtained. So as per the Urey-Miller experiment, they recreated they passed current with the help of electrodes, and they maintained a temperature of 800 degrees Celsius, and the water containing chamber was heated, and after a week the formation of amino acids were observed. And as I told you, similar kind of experiments were also performed, and in those experiments there was formation of sugar, nitrogen bases, lipids were observed. And at the same time, the composition of meteorites was also analyzed. Okay, the composition was also analyzed, and it was revealed that similar compounds were also presented elsewhere in the space. So it was not on the Earth, but in the universe, the formation of similar compounds was also observed. And thus the chemical evolution of life was more or less accepted one. So out of all the theories, this concept was more acceptable in comparison to the other theories. Now, origin of life. The first non-cellular form, it is believed, have originated 3 billion years ago. ऐसा माना जाता है कि जो first non-cellular form है, that has originated approximately 3 billion years ago. Okay, and there would have been a giant molecule like DNA. There would have been a giant molecule like RNA, proteins, or some polysaccharides, and it could be DNA also. And these capsules, they were able to replicate itself, right? And these capsules means these molecules, they were able to reproduce, they were able to produce multiple copies of themselves. So the first cellular form must have appeared about 2 billion years ago. So आज से 3 बिलियन यानी 3 खरब साल पहले जो है नॉन सेलुलर फॉर्म एग्जिस्ट की, और इस नॉन सेलुलर फॉर्म में आरएनए प्रोटीन्स मौजूद थे या डीएनए मौजूद था, और धीरे धीरे ये रेप्लिकेट हुए, और करीब 2 billion years ago they formed the cellular form of life. And it is also believed that life appeared in water. So the first form of life must have originated in water. So this theory of abiogenesis, that means the first form of life, it arised due to evolutionary forces, okay, and the species and the life originated from the non-living molecules is mostly accepted by the scientist. And once these molecules they were formed, these single cells must have evolved, and once a single cell was formed, then these single cells, they have evolved to form groups of cells. Slowly and gradually cells evolved to form the tissues, and then tissues evolved to form the organs, and organs then evolved to form the organ systems, and gradually it lead to the formation of complex organisms of today. So several assumptions have been proposed regarding the evolution of life. As I said, they have 3 connotations, the 3 basic points. As we have already discussed, we have discussed in the very beginning that all living organisms, they were created as such, they were on the surface of the earth. Second, the diversity was also same. and the earth was formed around 4,000 years old. But these ideas were later challenged by the Charles Darwin. He challenged this idea because he made certain observations during a sea voyage. Okay, Charles Darwin, he was moving throughout the world on his ship. That name of the ship is HMS Beagle. So while touring through the world, he had observed certain things, and based on his observations, he strongly challenged this theory. He said that existing life forms, they shared similarities to various degree to other living organisms and among themselves also, and to those which have extincting from the earth, and they would have existed millions of years ago. And these extinctions, they have extinctions of different life forms that have took place also, and as the extinctions took place, simultaneously new forms of the species have also evolved in the history of earth. So this is a pathway how you can see, look into the this is where the Beagle, HMS Beagle has travelled. This was generally pathway through which the Charles Darwin has travelled on the world map. And he has observed that organisms, they undergo gradual evolution. Organisms, they undergo gradual modifications, gradually evolve, and this with as they adapt, they slowly undergo some modifications, and because of those modifications, they survive better in their natural conditions. It could be a climatic condition, it could be the factor like food or the physical factors, right? So gradually an organism is being modified, and these variations or modifications makes an organism better adapted to its climate, food conditions and the physical conditions. Okay. So he also talked about the fitness of the individual. He talked about the fitness of the individual, or he talked about the survival of the fittest. Means the organism who adapts itself, who is fit in the environment, or will leave more progeny than others who will survive, which will survive more and hence be selected by the nature. So Charles Darwin, he gave the concept of natural selection, that there are a number of organisms and each organism undergoes several modifications and he becomes better adapted to the environment. So if he is better adapted, that means he is better selected in the nature. And at the same time, there was another scientist who was called Alfred Wallace. Okay, Alfred Wallace, he's a naturalist. Okay, Alfred Wallace, he's a naturalist. Okay, everyone, he's a naturalist. He also worked in archipelago Malay archipelago island, and he also observed the similar conclusions. He also drew similar conclusions as drawn by the Darwin. He also said that all existing life forms, they show similarities with each other, and they also show the similarities with their ancestors. Okay, and both of them, they together concluded that Earth is not very old or not thousands of years as it was thought earlier, but billions of years old. And both of them, they supported this idea that Earth is billions of years old. It is not of millions of years old or not of thousands of years. Okay, तो हमारी जो Earth है वो उसकी एज हज़ारों में नहीं, खरबों में है. Okay. So now coming to your homework for today. I hope you were eagerly waiting for the homework. So for today, your homework will be, first of all, you will be making the notes of today. That is, you will make notes of the topic that we have discussed so far. Okay, and then you will, second thing, you will read the page numbers 127 to 128. These are the two page numbers that you will be reading and making notes. And if there is any doubt, then you will contact me on my personal number. Okay, everyone? Okay, that's all from my side for today. Bye, everyone.